We've talked before about the need for a progressive alliance, and I've said before, I'm all for it. We need to now get beyond that. We need to go, okay, we've seen the value of a progressive alliance. We know that if a progressive alliance happens, Labour can win the next election. So, what we need to think about is, how do we form this progressive alliance? How is it going to work? And not only that, what are the policies that a progressive alliance of, as we are seeing today, the progressive alliance of the Labour, Greens and Lib Dems will make for a future of the UK? What policies are they going to put forward? How are they going to change, the UK? And one of the biggies I think would actually absolutely would be, again, reforming our voting system, changing it to a STV, which is a single transferable vote system of the PR system. I think that would be a fantastic step forward. I also think that, again, reforming the House of Lords so that that now becomes an elected body under the same election system would also be a fantastic step forward. And I've often said before that if we can achieve both of those, that would be fantastic. If we can achieve one out of the two, again, that would be fantastic, because you would see huge changes in the electoral landscape of the UK. So overall, it's not just about forming the electoral alliance, it's also about what that alliance actually tends to do. And I think that is another conversation which I'm not seeing a lot happening, but I think needs to happen. And like I say, the next general election is only 3 years away. And of course, that's if Boris Johnson decides to get rid of the Fixed Term Parliament Act, it could be 2 years away for all we know. Like I say, and again, 3 years is not a long time. It really isn't if you think about it. So we need to get our act together, and especially Labour at the moment is in self-flagellation mode, and we need to, sort ourselves out. So we're going to go talk over a really good article that's in the New Statesman about a progressive alliance and how, again, the start of this could potentially work. So before we do jump into that, please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button. And also down below there is a link to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me a Coffee, where you can, buy me a coffee. And as always, thank you to all the people who do support my channel that way. So, like I said, this comes from the New Statesman, and the title is, Labour must fully accept that it needs a progressive alliance if it is ever to govern again. The Milton Keynes Council has been in no overall control since 2006. But on May the 6th, the Conservatives surged into the first place, taking 4 Labour and 2 Liberal Democrat seats. In response, Labour and the Lib Dems have formed a joint administration to run the borough, dubbing it on the headed notepaper of Labour HQ for a progressive alliance. The Progressive Alliance, an idea championed within the Labour movement by Clive Lewis and the Compass director Neil Lawson since the 2017 general election, is taking off at the local level out of sheer necessity. In Bristol and Sheffield, where a Green Party surge took voter seats off Labour, talks were also underway over a progressive alliance, and ministers in Oxfordshire, Labour, Lib Dem and Green councillors have also formed a Fair Deal alliance to run the county. In a joint statement, their leaders professed a shared vision that underpins the principles shared across our manifesto, with climate change and environment at the heart. Cambridge County Council has also followed suit. In Burnley, where Labour lost 1 seat to the Tories and 2 to the Greens, the council, which was previously under overall no control, is likely to run by a Lib-Labour coalition. In Labour's highest echelons, the stiff upper lip of party tribalism, however, still rules, just as it did under Ed Miliband and Jeremy Corbyn. Faced with palpable demographic desertions, the young urban progressives to the Greens and the elderly to the Tories, Labour is socially minded, all that it has to do to find a credible leader or some non-scary policies to which those voters would come back to. It is a psychological blow of the local elections was, therefore, profound, And profoundly, yes, Andy Burnham, by playing to the kind of Manc nationalism, achieved a complete landslide. Yes, the socialist-led Labour councils of Salford and Preston strengthened their grip throughout the mixture of radicalism and competence. And yes, Labour advanced slightly in Wales. But the biggest story is the fragmentation of Labour's tribal alliance along the lines of culture, values and identity, and the advance of the working class Conservatives and the ex-industrial coastal English towns, even in Manchester, but at the ward level. Burnham went backwards in the Tory voting parts of Lee and Wigan. Labourism has no answers to this because it yet has no theory on its own existence. A party set up to represent all workers by talking to the trade unions' agendas into Parliament has been disorientated by the emergence of new forms of exploitation beyond work, new forms of resistance, and the fragmented identities created by an information society. The tactical answer was always one more have. The first thought of the social democratic technocracy of Ed Miliband, then the radical socialism of Jeremy Corbyn, and now through Keir Starmer, who pictures his project as a synergy of his two predecessors. For almost 10 years, this has meant Labour HQ trying to get out the vote operation for a vote that has not really been there. Last June, I wrote that there were only two routes to power for Labour: to redesign itself as an umbrella party that can incorporate all its fragments, maintaining their cultural rivalries through a radical programme of redistribution and investment, or to embrace a progressive alliance. And I agree with both of those. I think that a complete rethinking of Labour is necessary, but like I say, I am also for a progressive alliance as well. Again, both things can happen, and I'm pulling for both, but sometimes you've got to think what's potentially the more likely thing that can get us across the line, and it is a progressive alliance. So, a year on, it is clear that the party as an umbrella option isn't working. First, because the two factions of most loyal to Labourism, the old right and the socialist left, care more about fighting each other than nurturing an alliance. Leave aside the blame game. The result has been a shadow cabinet devoid of left voices and figures of smaller and less enthusiastic membership, and worst of all, policy paralysis. The former Shadow Chancellor, Angelina Dodds, who is now leading Labour's policy review, at least has a clean sheet from which to start after Starmer effectively disowned the 2017 and 2019 manifestos. But policy alone, though important, won't change Labour's predicament. The Tories are threatening to become a homogenic first party because of the pandemic gives the government a pandemic boost. The presence of the Prime Minister in your living room is bound to solidify whoever is in power. The SNP and Welsh Labour have also benefited from the incumbency effect. Second, because under Boris Johnson the Conservatives have moderated austerity, they have begun to promise money and deliver it, aside by the Treasury prepared to borrow far more in a year than Labour promised across 5 years. This is now a different enemy compared to a polarised and privatised the executive to that extent. Whoever has a majority in Parliament, Britain is becoming a one-party state for Tory placement. From the National Security Advisor to the BBC board, the new Toryism is xenophobic and is prepared to use taxpayers' money to buy votes. Same old Tories. The pre-briefed line used 2 weeks ago by Labour candidates does not reflect this. But this goes to the very heart of the party's problem. When Dominic Cummings was appointed to Downing Street, there was much amusement at the concept of a OODA loop, a decision-making strategy adopted from the US military. But the OODA loop is what Labour lacks. It can't observe, orientate, decide or act at a pace that is sufficient to defeat its enemies. If it did, it would recognise that the Tory advances happened when the progressive majority is disunified, and it would orient towards the danger the one-party rule, and a corrupt state in England while the UK fragments. Labour must now decide on its policy to offer to seek to unite rival cultural constituencies. First, we need a cross-party secretariat to host negotiations between local council groups, and around this could be built a formal electoral alliance for snap general elections that Johnson might call as early as 2022. Second, Labour needs a united shadow cabinet, including the left as well as the right, the positive engagement within party membership as well. Third, it needs a machine that goes beyond get out the vote. Labour activists have to be taught how to persuade voters and build alliances. Fourth, it needs to be a clear and simple policy offer, modelled on Joe Biden's economic stimulus, which means a commitment to borrowing and spending around £200 billion. First, it needs to urgently rule change to stop Labour HQ from obstructing or disciplining those who try to form electoral alliances at grassroots level. The fact is, the Conservatives' offer of imperial nostalgia, corruption intricate on climate change is at odds with the majority of opinion in the UK. There is a progressive majority trapped inside a system and is desperately in need for reform. Labour's inner circle is still gripped with uncertainty. What's Keir's strategy? Is Mandy really in charge? How much power does Angie have? My advice is to take a deep breath and say something that's heretical within Labourism. We can no longer govern alone. To save Britain from the fate of Viktor Orban's Hungary, we need to construct a governmental alliance, a progressive alliance of councils as much as throughout the force majeure as insight, and they are showing the way. And I completely 100% agree on this. Labour not only has to have a fundamental change within itself, but we also need to work towards a progressive alliance. And I've said before, both these things need to happen. And as was said there is a potential that if Johnson does get rid of the Fixed Term Parliament Act, Johnson could call a snap election as early as 2022. And if that happens, there are some very worrying signs that Johnson could essentially win a 122 seat majority. And then from that point on, we would be under complete one-party rule. Forget about us having, the golden days of the three-party rule system where it was, Labour, the Conservatives and the Lib Dems. That's not coming back. The two-party rule system where it became Labour and, the Conservatives, that ain't coming back. Under these new conditions and rules, of which, by the way, even the Conservative Party is going to struggle because, hey, if we give the people enough breadcrumbs, then, well, they might think better of us. But it's still the same old Tory party. We've seen just yesterday about Boris Johnson making promises that he can't cash. And all these promises are going to come home to roost at once. And we cannot wait for that to happen. We have to strike now, and we have to offer true progressive ideas, because the majority of public thinking is for these progressive ideas. We just need to actually put them out, and having a progressive alliance is a start. So, as always, thank you for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share and subscribe button. And of course, down below there is a link to my Patreon page as well as a one-off donation link. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.